After just over a year out of the game, Mauricio Pochettino is back at his former club. With Thomas Tuchel spending just over 2 trophy-laden years there, his sacking serves as yet another reminder of what success means for a manager to take on the PSG mantle, and perhaps as yet another warning to Pochettino that domestic titles won't be enough. Hey, I'm Adrian from Rabona TV, and today we'll be looking at PSG, Tuchel, and Pochettino, and what we've learned from the past, what Poch can expect, and why I think the PSG manager position is one of the most difficult to take on in all of Europe. And hey, if you're watching this video and you think to yourself, you know, I don't mind this content. I've got a lot more of it on the channel and 3 to 4 videos coming out every week, so hit that subscribe button so you can find your way back much more easily. But for now, let's look back to PSG and why it's one of the most difficult jobs in football and perhaps the most cutthroat. Admittedly, Tuchel's never been painted as someone who is easy to work with, and his issues with Leonardo also played a role in his dismissal. As did the fact that, according to Guillaume Balaguer, Tuchel had already informed the club that he wouldn't be sticking around for the 2021-22 season. His initial 2-year contract was extended for a further year, but it seemed like he was over it. But even with that, Tuchel became another manager that just wasn't a fit for PSG. Back-to-back Ligue 1 titles, back-to-back Trophée des Champions or French Super Cups, a Coupe de France and a Coupe de la Ligue in 2020, and of course, PSG's most successful Champions League campaign ever, in which they made it to the final for the first time in the club's history. With PSG, it has become increasingly clear that domestic titles are simply expected of you, and while winning them won't ensure job safety, missing out on them, even for a season, can be fatal to your job security. PSG was playing well under Thomas Tuchel. The team showed great unity from about the spring of 2020 onward. As you'll maybe remember, they had a massive team dinner at Marco Verratti's restaurant and promised they would have unity to overcome their away defeat to Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League, and they never looked back in that competition. They looked like a different PSG from what we were used to in the Champions League. Just 1 month prior to that team meeting, however, in February, Tuchel had said, quote, "Handling dressing room egos is demanding." And I'm sure previous PSG managers won't need any convincing. Just look to Unai Emery and his very public wrestling of power, if you will, between himself and Neymar. For Tuchel, he had a sideline spat with Mbappé. Sure, PSG had a very rough start to the season thanks in part to players being out due to COVID, and also in part to just poor performances, which can fall on the manager, on Tuchel. That, and the fact that for the first time since perhaps when AS Monaco won the league with their super team, Ligue 1 seems to have some major challengers to PSG's Ligue 1 throne. A throne they've sat upon for 7 of the last 8 seasons. But looking at the job that Tuchel did at PSG as far as a returns on silverware point of view, does further the argument that domestic titles do nothing to safeguard any manager at this club, but the lack of them, or the lack of performance in domestic competitions, can be used against you. In April of 2016, while still with Tottenham, Mauricio Pochettino spoke with French radio station RMC Sport, saying, quote, "I've always said that I would be pleased to join a great club like PSG. Come to Paris? I hope so. It is true that it would please me. It's part of my dreams. I try to watch all their matches, especially in the Champions League." And despite what your first thought may have been, that the guy just wanted a pay raise and access to top players given PSG's seemingly never-ending funds in comparison to Spurs at the time, he of course does have a history with PSG, having signed for them in 2001 as a player, of course, and staying with them for 2 years, winning the UEFA Intertoto Cup in the process. And so after getting sacked by Tottenham 13 months ago, Pochettino instantly became one of the most interesting options for clubs in search of a manager. Both Monaco and Benfica took a crack at him this past summer, but he passed. Other top clubs across Europe pondered the idea of bringing him in off of the back of his transformational years at Tottenham, but nothing came of it. And so, with PSG faltering a bit domestically, and with Tuchel's relationship with the club deteriorating a bit, coupled with the availability of Pochettino, it was just a marriage of convenience. That's not to undermine how good of a manager he is. And so he finds himself in an interesting spot now. He will certainly have more cash available to him to invest into the building of the squad than he did previously at Tottenham, but something he won't have as much of? Time. Pochettino spent 3 years at Espanyol in Spain, a season with Southampton before getting recruited by Tottenham, where he stayed for 5 years. He was given time to build something at Spurs, and he certainly did so, while simultaneously building up his own reputation of being a manager that can get the best out of young talent, with a side that can play some attractive football in the process. And this is where he will be taking on a completely different project to what he's used to. Pochettino is a builder, and as Guillaume Balaguer says, he earned his reputation by playing a brand of exciting, exuberant football that gained the respect of the watching world, and just as importantly, because of the financial constraints put upon him by coaching, coaxing, and cajoling, and polishing the diamonds in the rough that he had at the Tottenham Academy. It won't be easy dealing with players like Neymar, who, with the permission of the president and the coach, will often choose when to play and when to rest. Or with an Mbappé who knows just what he can bring to the side when he puts his mind to it, yet sometimes doesn't respond to those demands made of him. It's a completely different kind of player that he is going to be dealing with, and getting them on his side and perhaps staying on his side during his tenure, while not undermining him, will be one of his most difficult tasks, along with winning the Champions League, of course. Pochettino had some decent Premier League races. He made a Champions League final, a massive achievement in itself at Tottenham. And net, he did many good things for Tottenham during his time with the club, even if things had allegedly soured drastically on the pitch and off of it throughout 2019. But in speaking of time again, PSG has become a club that is seemingly hiring managers with the criteria of them winning the Champions League within 2 to 3 seasons. Laurent Blanc is the only manager to have lasted 3 seasons with PSG since the Qatari takeover. Carlo Ancelotti lasted just 1.5 seasons. Emery left after 2 seasons as the second most successful manager in their history. Tuchel was only around for 2.5 seasons and was sacked as the 3rd most successful manager and the first manager to take the club to a Champions League final. And yet halfway through the season, he's gone. You know, I was about to say that the lines between success and failure at the club are blurred, but looking at it within the context of PSG, it's actually clear as day. Success for the club is now winning the Champions League. Domestic trophies? They're a bit of a double-edged sword, with one edge being razor sharp and the other very blunt. Winning domestic titles does you no favors in terms of job security. That's the blunt side. They do you no favors because they are expected, and the absence of them will likely cost you your job if it isn't at the expense of a European title. That's the sharp side of the sword. So it creates an interesting problem for the manager. If you go all in on the Champions League at the expense of your domestic titles, you'd better hope that you win the Champions League, or your job will be in jeopardy. And even if you do get a clean sweep of the domestic titles, those will only keep you alive for a couple years at most. PSG's thirst for a European title is lethal, ruthless, and makes no exception for any manager of any standing. Plus, you add in the work that he will have to do in ensuring that some of the biggest egos in football are all happy, something that the last 2 managers in Emery and Tuchel really struggled with, and you could argue that all of these things combined provide one of the most difficult management jobs in Europe, where domestic dominance isn't enough. This is what Pochettino was up against. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, do me a favor, a very easy, painless favor, by dropping a like for me so that the YouTube algorithm gives me a bit of love. But regardless, thanks again for watching. I love ya, and I'll catch you in the next video. Ciao.